This week, we're talking to someone who proves you don't need entrance music to steal the show. Sometimes all you need is a striped shirt, a quick count, and just enough attitude to remind everyone who's actually in charge.
That's right. This week's Summer Indie Spotlight guest is the Count, Mark Charles III. If you spent any time around the independent scene, you've probably seen him keeping the peace or trying to at promotions like 814 Wrestling, Rise, Renegade Wrestling Alliance, FNW, and Victory Championship Wrestling.
And we're not giving him the easy questions either. We're talking about what it's really like being the person every wrestler argues with, every manager blames, and every fan suddenly becomes an expert on the second your hand hits the mat.
We're diving into his journey through independent wrestling, the moments that tested him, the matches he'll never forget, the personalities he shared the ring with, and what it's like having the best seat in the house for some unforgettable moments.
Plus, we're settling one debate once and for all. No one holds more championships than the referee.
Seriously, referees have won more titles than anyone in wrestling history. They're just never going to keep them.
So, whether you've seen the count raising a wrestler's hand, breaking up a brawl, getting accidentally or maybe intentionally knocked out, or you're just curious about what life is really like inside the ropes from a referee's perspective,
Pull up a chair, turn the volume up, and get ready for another edition of our Summer Indie Spotlight.
That was a fantastic introduction. I tell you what, you've hit everything pretty much spot on. Fantastic.
we are so glad to have you. We're so excited.
I'm entertained already. I'm entertained already. You're fantastic.
So, for our fans that might just be getting to meet you for the first time, why don't you just let everybody know who exactly you are?
Yes, the Count Mark Charles III. My motto is fairness, kindness, and impartiality. And those are the most important three things for a referee to have. I had grown up watching wrestling in the 1980s. I was a Hulkamaniac from the time I was about 10 years old in 1983, 84 when that first started. And I've been a WWF kid ever since then. You can see on the wall behind me, I've made a lot of friends over the years and uh, continuing uh, some traditions of of giving back. I've had such a blessed life. I love to give back, and I've chosen the Cauliflower Alley Club to be able to do that. I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit about that tonight.
Absolutely. So, you know, every wrestling story starts with your spark. And you mentioned, those early 80s and, Hulkamania. What exactly about that era? Because that's my era too. I was born in 85, so I was on, the end of, or in the middle of Hulkamania, depending on your perspective. What exactly made you fall in love with professional wrestling?
That's a great question, actually. So I've got a few years on you. In '73, I was born and discovered stuff when I was probably about 10 years old. Um, comparing modern wrestling with wrestling from what we now call the golden era, it's very flashy now. There's a lot of jumping around off of things, and the physiques are much more slight than they used to be. We don't have a lot of the monsters that we always saw that Vince McMahon loved, and that I came to love on television. Back then, Steve, we had when you watch that, you listen to the crowd. The crowd is never ever silent. The crowd did not know what the word kayfabe was. They weren't sure. Like my dad was sure that this thing wasn't quite real, but nobody could ever entirely prove a thing like that. It wasn't a secret that was out in the open. It was stuff that was guarded really well, and that showed in the crowd reactions. When you watch a Bruno Sammartino match, especially against Larry Zbyszko, against Roddy Piper, any of those guys, the crowd is never ever silent. And when you take a look at the visuals of that thing, there's not a lot of flashy graphics. At the beginning, when I started watching, there wasn't even a lot of entrance music. But you had a very intimate entrance where guys would walk down and everyone could pat them on the shoulder. And there were policemen there at Madison Square Garden. And there was lights in the arena that lit up the ring. And made that ring the most important thing in that entire room. And that is gone. That's all gone now. The most important thing in that room used to be the ring. And now, it's the flash. It's the I don't know what the advertising. It's the giantness of the entire thing. The thing is everything's so huge now. Um, and I watch a lot of these guys and ladies doing their thing, and I think, God, I really hope you could, I hope you can walk in 20 years, God willing. Um, so that's, for me, the biggest thing. I have a lot of friends who were 80s legends and have spoken a lot about these things to them. And they said, Coco Beware told me once that he said, man, when I would go out for a promo, they didn't tell me what to say. Nothing was written down. They didn't give me a script. He said, they said to me, you're talking to a guy who beat you up last week and stole your bird, and you gotta, tell him a thing or two, go, and then off he'd go. And it was much more genuine then. I think the whole thing was much more genuine. Now it's movie roles essentially, and they even do, post game shows and talk about it, and they talk about their character, and I miss the old days when people didn't know any better. They weren't smart enough to, and that was something that I wish we had today. I'm nostalgic for a thing I was never actually on this side of the guardrail at the time.
Can understand that. I mean, it is a different era in wrestling. I'm the Attitude Era fan. That's kind of where got my start. I'm the same age as
Hmm.
Steve, at 40, but um, watching it evolve and in the time since we've been together, seeing how much has changed and like it's definitely so different and the nostalgia of the 80s is like it's real. Like that was a
Hmm.
different time and it was more about like you said the ring and what's going on in the ring and like the storylines were there, but like they were in it. That was their thing, the whole thing. Like I don't know if a lot of the wrestlers were even in movies really until like Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper and stuff like that. And yeah, so and when you're talking about it, I'm like, wow, it takes me back to a time I don't really remember because I wasn't a fan then, but
It
but I'm
does,
sure
and
Steve
it's
can
yeah,
understand.
yeah, yeah. You can understand, and you're right about that too. That was Rocky with Hulk Hogan was really that, I think, that first big breakthrough, and it was Bill Apter. I've been working on a project with Bill Apter. We're I don't think he's promoting it now, so I think it's okay to say that we're creating a magazine of some of his personal file from over the years, from 50 years of being behind the scenes and in front of the camera too. But he was the guy that brought not only Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler together for that, slap heard around the world on the was it the Late Show? I think, whatever the David Letterman show is. And he also got Hulk Hogan into the Rocky. He got him hooked up with Sylvester Stallone. So without Bill Apter, we missed some of the biggest moments in wrestling.
You'd miss Thunderlips.
Underlips, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I was trying to educate Mayor on like who Bill Apter was or is, and
Hmm.
referencing what everyone called the Apter mags, how he was so influential to all of that, and it was just like, oh, I didn't know all that, and I'm glad you brought up the Andy Kaufman story because I'm a huge Andy Kaufman fan. He was like he did comedy, TV, and he was in wrestling, and it was great, and I love that 80s, Tennessee territory. I thought
Hmm.
Memphis was awesome. That was if I could have lived in any area, it would have been there because, that TV and that weekly programming was so special.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One of my more special moments, really in my entire lifetime last October. Bill Apter had his 80th birthday, and I went out to Lutz, Florida, for the GrappleCon that Barry Rose runs out there, and Bill was there when we had celebrated his birthday with Darla Staggs from Cauliflower Alley Club and Barbara Goodish, Bruiser Brody's widow, and hosts of all of the people. And I had rented a car out there and had an Airbnb, and I picked up my buddy Tito Santana in the morning and took him to the hotel. And yeah, I love Tito. I have a funny story, a good story about Tito. I'll tell you later. Remind me about the airport. Um, and I picked up Bill in the afternoon, and Bill said, "Hey, I have a couple places I want to go. Can we go, Bill? I'll take you wherever you want to go." So we went back to the hotel and picked up Barbara and Darla, and we went to 104 North Albany, um, in Tampa, which was the home of Championship Wrestling from Florida. And to see him there, and the building is now closed down. It's slated for demolition, and but to see Bill relive the memories in his head. He was there with Gordon Soley and um, Dusty Rhodes, and he talked about Bruiser Brody being in that building. And it's just a tiny little place. It's just a tiny little building. I think he told me, maybe if I remember properly, there were 60, 80 chairs in there. Brian Blair started there, and just the rich history of this place that unfortunately is going to be gone soon if it isn't already. But our second stop was really the one that I'll never forget, was Hulk Hogan's Clearwater uh, beach shop. So we got in the Clearwater, and of course Hulk Hogan had just died I forget exactly when. It wasn't long before that. And we walked in there, and I'm looking around at this, and Hulk Hogan is my ultimate, and I got to meet him before he died. I was so blessed for that to have happened. But we went into this place, and I'm looking around, and Hulk Hogan's everywhere. And I look over, and I see Bill Apter and Barbara Goodish, Bruiser's wife, and Darla's over there. And I caught a glimpse of Virgil on the television set, and Virgil's very special to me. We could talk about that too. But when I saw that, to be in that place with those people, I was overwhelmed. I was moved to tears at that moment. I called my wife and I said, "I can't believe this is happening. I'm in here crying like a baby in Hulk Hogan's beach shop." And it felt like he could walk in at any moment. And we ended up going to dinner after that at his restaurant down the street. And really, just one of my biggest lifelong memories, that I'll keep with me,
It's special.
forever.
I feel like you have so many like beautiful moments in your own wrestling history, like so many accolades and so many incredible like things and stories to tell. We could do like 20 podcasts. Um, but like you did mention a handful of things here. I think definitely we should dive into Virgil because that's somebody that was special to you and you had a close relationship with him. Virgil is somebody I didn't know a lot about him before he died. I still don't know a ton, but he's one of those um wrestlers or people in wrestling history that I'm like endeared to. There was something endearing about him. So like anytime we watched a match that had Virgil, I'd always be like so happy to see him because there's something about him. So why don't you talk about that special friendship that you had with Virgil?
You hit that something. You hit on something there. That when Virgil was a bad guy, he was absolutely hated, and when he was a good guy, he was absolutely endeared to everybody. When he beat Ted DiBiase for that $1 million belt with Roddy Piper in his corner, if I'm remembering properly, that was just the pop he got from that was unbelievable. People loved him, and people, I would love taking him around because he didn't change in the face. Virgil was not in good physical shape by the time he died, but he still would get around men. He never ever complained about anything, unless it was food. He would complain about food. He didn't like peanut butter pie of all things. Um, accused me of trying to kill him one time when I offered him. We were at a diner and the lady said, he said, "What kind of pie you got?" She said, "We have cherry." "No, I don't want that." "You got apple?" "No." He says, "We have peanut butter." He goes, "Peanut butter? Who would put peanut butter in a pie?" He said, "Are you trying to kill me?" I said, "Are you? Come on, Rich. That sounds wonderful." And we were at, what was that? Is it Dean's Diner? I forget what the one that's out on Route 22, and I forget where we were. Anyway, I've taken him to rest stops on the turnpike, on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, gone to the restroom, come back, and there's five men around him, just fanboying over, "Oh my God, this is Virgil. This is so cool." And I get it. I absolutely understand. Virgil, I ran into him late in his life. He had about just over a year and a half left when I got to him, and I had just kind of became friends right away. I felt my heart went out to him because he was in bad financial shape and he was in bad physical shape. and he needed some caring. He had a roommate that was keeping him off the streets, but he needed to get around to his fan fest and such. And so I put him in the car and take him places, and uh, always treated him as well as I could. And I think a lot of people appreciated that, which is, not why I did it. I did it because, I love that guy. Everybody's got a Virgil story. Some of them are great. Some of them are not so flattering. But I'm pretty good at overlooking, people's shortcomings at times. And, he was one of those guys that had my heart. So I would take him to, I think the furthest we went was Baltimore one time. And, the joy that people get by seeing Virgil was really a very rewarding thing for me. He would he'd have a white hair and a white beard, and I realized that when he would leave for a trip like that, um, he didn't look like Virgil at that point. Didn't look like the quintessential Virgil. So I took to I'd either take him to a barber first, or I started carrying clippers with me, and we'd shave him up a little bit, and then he felt so good. Now he looks like Virgil. Um, and Virgil and Ted had a falling out um, years ago. And when I took Virgil to, I think that was actually the Baltimore trip, um, Ted was there, and he saw me coming in with Virgil, and he pulled me to the side and said, "What is wrong with Virgil? He doesn't look well." And I told him, I don't know exactly, because Virgil was a hard guy to get a true story out of sometimes. Uh, and I said, but I could tell you, Ted, I don't know exactly what it is, but it isn't great. There were some strokes that happened, and there was the rumor of cancer, and he claimed there wasn't cancer, but I don't know the truth on that one to this day. But I talked to Ted and told him what was going on, and I said, Ted, I don't know how much time he has left. And Ted said, well, I've been estranged from him for a while. I had to put some distance between us, but seeing him now, I'm going to ask them to put our tables together, which he did. And he said, anytime anyone wants a photo of the two of us together, I'm going to give him that money. And he did that. And then he did that one more time. We were at the Hamburg Field House in Hamburg, Pennsylvania, which is where, Steve, that's where the building that Roddy Piper hit Snuka in the head with a coconut. I was in that spot, and that was really cool. And the two of them were together there. I had him together with, Tony Atlas, and, had him um, together with Tito Santana. And he was a really fantastic, he was a good companion in the car. He used to talk about eating. He was absolutely off the wall, talking about eating onions like an apple. And he one time said to me, man, I killed kids in high school. I said, you killed kids in high school? Yep. Said, how'd you kill them? Snap their necks. I said,
Oh my God.
how many kids did you kill in high school, Virgil? He said, about 10. I said, you killed 10 kids in high school? Yep. He says, I killed them in college too. So how many kids did you kill in college, Virg? About 12. I said, you killed 22 kids in your lifetime? Yep. I said, I'm surprised they didn't call the police. He said, they did. I said, what'd the police say? He said, they shouldn't have gotten in the ring with me. And that was Virgil's humor. So, that's probably the safest one. I can't repeat a lot of them. Not safe for work type of stories. But he was really something. I miss him every day. I was there. When he died, his sister called me 6:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. He was in the hospital for just 4 days. And of course, I knew when I saw that call at 6:30 in the morning, I knew what that was. And I went over to the hospital, and I was the first one there. And the nurse let me in, and uh, I said my goodbyes to him and said some prayers over him, and then the family showed up, and his sister he was 71. He kayfabed the world into thinking he was 61, because that's what WWE put on their graphics. But he was 71 years old, and his sister 73, Tony, back then was afraid that um, she was going to have to take out a personal loan to pay for his funeral. And I told her, we're not going to do that. I'll take care of that part. I'll worry about that, and you take care of your brother. So I ended up going with her to the funeral home that week, and no one else was available, so I went with her. And they asked me if I would be in charge of putting his ensemble together for his clothing, since she wanted an Under Armour jogging suit because he loved wearing that. I got him a jogging suit, and I got him a Virgil shirt, and and a tracksuit jacket, and he Virgil, probably, I don't know if how well known secret this is or not, but Virgil would always, he never wore socks and he didn't wear underwear. Virgil was very proud of going commando. So I didn't bring any to the funeral home when I brought the clothes. The director said to me, "You have to. We need socks and we need underwear." I said, "Virgil would never forgive me if we put underwear on him." She said, "It's by law. We have to do it." I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But I went out. He always would talk about his love for Roddy Piper. He called him Pipe. Always stories about Pipe. And so as a tribute to Roddy Piper, I bought him a pair of plaid boxer shorts. So Virgil was put to his final rest in with a little tribute to his pal covering his butt. So yeah, I kind of went on a rambler. I don't remember where I was with all this, but yeah, Virgil was very special. We raised $16,000 for his funeral from the generosity of fans around the world, literally around the world. From the Cauliflower Alley Club sent money immediately to the funeral home, and we actually made enough money that we were able to send that back so we could, the CAC could help other people who in need. Chris Jericho came through with a $5,000 donation right at the beginning, which just took all that pressure off my shoulders, and I'm eternally grateful for that. I'm looking forward to meeting Chris one day and giving him a big hug for that one.
Amazing. We always talk about Chris Jericho because that's one thing we've noticed about him is that like when a wrestler passes, like he always comes through with a donation for the
Hmm.
family. And like, what a beautiful gesture, that is.
It's a beautiful thing when people give back. I don't have a lot of money to give back, but I have time, and I give my time. And when Virgil died, really without anything, he had no health care after wrestling. These guys come in when they're young, and that's kind of what they knew. And it's different now. Things are different now for them, thank God. But back then, it was you become a wrestler, and then you wrestle for 5 or 10 years or whatever, how long it was for Virgil. It was 12 years, and then you're out the door as soon as you're not needed anymore. As soon as a promoter doesn't need you, you're gone. And all of a sudden, well, what do I do now? You don't have, they're independent contractors, but they're also under contract, not allowed to go anywhere else. And there was no, the famous story about Jesse the Body Ventura trying to get a union going, and that Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon put a stop to that. So they did, but there was never any sort of health care for them or anything like that. And it showed. So Coco now has problems with his neck, and Virgil had problems with his neck, and I see a lot of these guys can barely walk anymore. It's new hips, it's new knees, it's new shoulders. Shoulders are bad. Everything bumps to the head, and forgetfulness, and traumatic brain injuries, and all that sort of thing. And there wasn't really much to help them, and I constantly was under the thought of, geez, I really wish I could do something. I wish I had millions of dollars. I'd set up a trust or something. And that's when I found the Cauliflower Alley Club, and it was through Virgil, in a way, because he had put in a request for someone on his behalf put in a benevolent request for finances, some financial help through the Cauliflower Alley Club, and I was subsequently friends with Pam Morrison, who's J.J. Dillon's daughter, who was very good friends with Darla Staggs, who was the benevolent director at the time for CAC. And Pam said, "Well, call up Mark and talk to him. He knows a lot about Virgil and what's going on over there." And we did that, and that's just how I found the Cauliflower Alley Club. It fell right into my lap, and I was hooked ever since, because this was an organization who was doing exactly what I wanted to do, but didn't have the ability, to do myself. So I've been pouring my time into all that in the last few years.
So one thing a lot of wrestling fans might not realize is, Virgil was a wrestler before he was the bodyguard. Can you tell us, do you have any memories of Soul Train Jones?
Yeah, he talked about Soul Train Jones a lot. So, Soul Train Jones, and he stole the Apollo Creed outfit with this, stars and stripes and one of the shorts and the big tall top hat and all that stuff. He talked a lot about training with the Wild Samoans, with Sika and Alpha, and training with Samu and training with Rikishi, and back when he was Fatu first, and he was put into Memphis originally to kind of hone his skills there, and um, it was it was Tony Atlas that discovered him. Actually, I was in a car with Tony and Virgil once, and it was I was driving them through the backwoods of West Virginia, and it was like having your grandparents in the car bickering and telling me to slow down, but also telling me to speed up because Tony needed to get back to his hotel. And it was, they told me the story about that, and Virgil was a bodybuilder back then, clearly, and it was Tony who was also a bodybuilder, went to a bodybuilding competition, and that's where he met Mike Jones. Later to become Virgil. So it was, Virgil always loved Tony for that. Virgil credited Rick Martel and Tito Santana as two of the guys who were two of his best teachers and were good to him throughout his career. Then of course he credited to Hulk Hogan for getting him a contract with WCW that paid out even after that organization folded.
One thing that does stand out about your resume is all your work away from the ring. Now you had mentioned that you're on the advisory board, or either advisory board chairman and membership coordinator. So for fans who may not know, can you tell us what the CAC means to the wrestling business and why it's become such an important part of your life?
I would love to start off with caulifloweralleyclub.org. Go to caulifloweralleyclub.org if you are a wrestling fan and join for $36 a year. It's $3 a month. You could, for an annual membership, you could also go in for a lifetime membership. And I will tell you why it's important, because if you have ever been entertained by a wrestler, if you ever had a favorite wrestler, if you've ever seen somebody do a move that made you wince and think, oh my God, that must have hurt, I can assure you that it did. And I can assure you that at some point down the line, their bodies will pay for this later on. And this is what we're here for. So we're known as the Ring of Friendship. The Cauliflower Alley Club is the Ring of Friendship. And, it truly is a group of hundreds of friends together to celebrate the wrestling industry, to recognize wrestlers, referees, historians, friends of wrestling and that sort of thing. And we have annual awards banquet, and it's been around since 1965. It was started by Iron Mike Mazurki, and back then it was for wrestlers, but also boxers and also actors. And over the years, it's kind of focused much more on wrestling. B. Brian Blair from the Killer Bees he's our president, and always doing a fine job there. We recently lost Rich Engling, our executive vice president, who left us some huge shoes to fill. We have been picking up since then because we have our 60th reunion coming up August 24th to 26th in Las Vegas. And that reunion last year I went to for the first time, and boy, I made friends immediately, and they were some really, really interesting people. And it's from the very moment, everyone is so welcoming and loving and caring, and we're all together for one major goal, which is to financially support our wrestling loved ones when they need some help. So if there's a house fire, or if there's plumbing issue, a catastrophe somewhere, if someone needs rent covered, if someone has medical bills, if you have spent your life, 3 years of your life making your living in wrestling, then in general you're eligible for benevolent funds. And I saw that firsthand with Virgil, because when Virgil died, it was an immediate response. Brian Blair said to Darla Staggs, I want to, he was motivated to, he loved Virgil, and he sent a check, and it went straight to the funeral home. And like I said, we were able to send it right back, which was really an awesome thing because that money goes out to help someone else. And we help a lot of people who like to remain quiet about it, and we help people who will sing it from the mountaintops. And Marty Jannetty just recently had his part of his leg amputated, and he put out on his Facebook page a big thank you to the Cauliflower Alley Club, because we were, we supported him a little bit, and I was so grateful that he reached out and asked for that, because I'd had lunch with Marty when he was in Pittsburgh. It's got to be 2 years, maybe 3 by now. Um, and he was in rough shape then. He could really barely walk. And so it's really, for me, very heartwarming to be part of a group that is here set up specifically to help wrestlers, and wrestlers that I loved in my youth, and even now. Um, and for the price tag of $36, it's what better thing could you spend $36 on? You could spend $36 on half a dinner, and here you are, you're helping wrestlers to survive, in some cases, mere survival. So caulifloweralleyclub.org, you go on there, you click the become a member, and it walks you straight through it. When you become a member, you get a nice email and a certificate from me, and you get a quarterly newsletter that is all the news about what's going on in Cauliflower Alley Club. It's called The Ear, and this is the lead up to our 60th anniversary. We're going to have Bret Hart with us this year. We're going to have Danny Spivey with us this year. Referee Jimmy Corderas, I'm excited about. I'm very excited about Gary Michael Capetta, who is one of my Trapper Tom, one of my buddies. Trapper Tom, formerly of KSWA Wrestling when KSWA was around. Trapper Tom is one of the best announcers that I have ever experienced personally, and he's just, that Gary had that nasally voice to him. I spoke to Gary on the phone the other day, and I was waiting to hear this nasally voice, and it wasn't there, and I thought, wow, he got me all these years. I always thought that was a natural thing, and I think he must put it on. I didn't ask him, but I'll see him in August, and I'm going to ask him. We'll have referee Jimmy Corderas there, who was Steve. You might remember when what was that kid's name? Daniel Pewter, I think, put Kurt Angle in an armbar, right? And it was Jimmy Corderas who was quick thinking to get out of that one by counting the 3 when Daniel's shoulders were down. So Jimmy has a podcast called Reffing It Up, and he has one with Donnie DeSilva called Huge Pop Radio, and they will be broadcasting, or at least taping. I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet, but they will be running the Huge Pop Radio podcast from what we call the hospitality room at the reunion. So I'm very excited about this year. This year was going to be, Hulk Hogan, and of course we know how that turned out. So disappointing there, but God rest his soul. I miss seeing him around a lot on social media and such too. Shame.
Yeah, that is the struggle with pro wrestling. So make sure all of our listeners here, make sure you check out the Cauliflower Alley Club. It's like Disneyland for adult wrestling fans. So check it
We'll
out.
definitely we'll link it in our show notes, and we'll
you.
put a little link to it in our bio on Instagram too, so that way people can
Beautiful.
support if they want to.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, so talking about another one of your legendary friends in professional wrestling, as a fellow, 80s wrestling, fan here, and someone who purposefully only went to the grocery store with my parents so I could read the wrestling magazines while they shopped.
Yes.
How special is it to be collaborating and spending time with and just being in the presence of someone who's seen and done everything in pro wrestling like Bill Apter?
Yeah. So it's Bill came to Pittsburgh several years back, and some of the KSWA crew were there for for lunch. And Trapper Tom had invited me out there for that. And when I met Bill Apter, I'd never met him before, but to see his welcome to me, you would think we were old friends. It was immediate. And I was wearing a bow tie at lunch, and he was so impressed that I would wear a bow tie. And then I saw him again in St. Louis at Herb Simmons Fan Fest later, I guess mid the next year. And then it became like, oh my God, he's always wearing a bow tie. This guy, he looked fantastic. And we were at I guess 2 years ago by now at another Fan Fest, SICW in St. Louis in Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling, which is actually a very history rich, if I can side note for a moment, a very history rich promotion with Larry Matisick and Sam Munchnick before him, and now Herb Simmons, who's learned from some of the best, and Herb is one of the best, and he brings incredible talent in. He's got incredible talent there, and so I went out to that on the advice of Darla Staggs. I went to that one, and my gosh, just fell in love with it. And talk about immediate friendship with so many great people. Greg Oliver, the writer from Toronto, fantastic sports writer and other books. Bill Apter was there right away, and became instant friends with Abdullah the Butcher. We got to hit on Abdullah the Butcher after, and Malika, and just such a great place to be. But this FanFest 3, because FanFest 4 was this year, 5 is coming up. So make it out to FanFest 5 in St. Louis. You will not be disappointed. I can guarantee you that. That'll be the spring next year. But I was there with Bill and Sunny from Glow, Sunny, the California girl from Glow, Patricia Summerland, and we were at the lobby in the Hilton, and we took a photograph together, the three of us. And Bill says, "Let me see the photo." And we looked at the photo. He says, "We look like your parents." So right from then, Bill and Sunny became my adoptive parents. Bill is actually old enough to be my parent. Sunny is not, but it's still a lot of fun. So he's become Daddy O, and I've become Sonny O. And if I call him anything other than that, I hear about it. So Daddy O Apter called me up one time and said, "Hey, I have a question for you. I've been a graphic designer for over 30 years and a production manager and that sort of thing in my other life." And he said, I've had a project that I want to work on, and I would love for you to do it. And he said, we want to showcase all these files that I have. I've got thousands of photos and Rolodex cards and greeting cards and never before seen behind the scenes footage, things of him at Pro Wrestling Illustrated. He had what he called the COW, the Championship Office Wrestling belt. So people would come in and challenge him for it, like Dan Severn, and you could see photos when that magazine is ready. Dan Severn challenging for it, and Nikita Koloff winning it, and I held it. I held it one time, as all referees too, like you mentioned, Steve. And he's got goodness, Rolodex cards in there from Bobo Brazil and Hulk Hogan's parents and Dusty Rhodes and all these really cool things. This packet arrived at my house, and I'm opening it up, and my hands are trembling because here's a little card that says, to my great friend Bill Apter from Captain Lou Albano. And here's photos that were some of the photos that have been seen that were in the magazines and still have all the little tick marks of crop marks and that sort of thing. So this will all be ready for. I'm literally working on it right now, and it'll all be ready for the reunion in Vegas in late August. So got a long way to go in a short time, but God knows I'm always under the gun for some sort of deadline.
So incredible. Let's
Really.
talk about Abdullah the Butcher. So you received the Abdullah the Butcher Helping Hand Award at his 85th birthday celebration. Is that correct?
That's right here behind me up on the wall. There it is. Yeah.
Oh, what an incredible honor. What does it mean to you, that recognition?
I don't know why. I have a thing like that. Like I mentioned, I met him in St. Louis and at a hotel, and Malika Marshall is his caretaker. She has been for years, and You can see her. You can see Malika in the dark side of the ring with Abdullah. So I knew who she was before then, and we'd been in touch before that, and I can't remember exactly why, but I met her finally at the hotel, and she was, Abby. She had Abby in a wheelchair. Her brother Rafiq was there. He was a cigar smoker, and so am I. So we hit it off really well. And at one point, she said, "Can you watch Abby for me, please? I need to go up to the room for a few minutes." Oh, okay, go ahead. So I'm in this empty lobby, sitting here. It's Abdullah the Butcher and me. So I started asking him questions, and he started telling me stories. And he was a cigar smoker his whole life, but he could no longer, for health reasons, actually smoke them. But he loved to chomp on them. So when I got home, I got the address from Malika, and I sent him a box of cigars. And then I sent him another box later, and another box after that when he would run through them. Um, and I guess sometimes just tiny little things like that are enough to, to make people, to show people that you care, I suppose, in a wrestling world that could be rather uncaring at times. One of the things that I mentioned my motto at the beginning: fairness, kindness, and impartiality. And it's really that kindness part that I try to bring to wrestling. I obviously I want to bring it back to wrestling, but also I was never sure it was here to begin with. But I'm trying to bring it back, and this award is part of that. When Malika was trying to put this whole thing together, she wanted to do something really special for Abby's 85th birthday. So she put together a huge celebration. Initially, it was going to be 3 nights long. Thankfully, cut back 2, but we had a panel of wrestlers that included Robert Gibson and Tommy Rich, and Paul Lee was there, and Randy Rose was there from the original Midnight Express, and we had referee Billy Silverman, Tony Atlas, of course, um, and goodness, Ross Hart was there. That was Brett's brother from the Hart family. Bob Johnson from Canada, who was also part of the Calgary Stampede in behind the scenes, and forgive me if I'm forgetting anyone, but uh, we had a panel there that night, and she had asked me to host that. I did a terrible job of it, but it was still a highlight of my life. While I was out there, I went to see my friend Travis Orendorff, who I had become friends with on Facebook, and now friends in over the phone, and now in person. Paul Orendorff's youngest son, who still has Paul's robes, and he made me wear Paul's robe. I didn't feel um I didn't feel he says to me, "Put it on. It's the blue one." And I said, I can't put this on. I can't, Travis, I can't wear it. He says, "Put it on, please." He said, "My dad would." I said, "I'm not worthy to wear this." He said, "My dad would tell you that you are worthy to wear this. Please put it on." And so I wore Paul Orndorff's robe because of Bill Apter. Steve, I wore the Hulkster headband, the famous Hulkster headband that Hulk gave to Bill. Yeah, yes, one of those. I know I talk about the Fan Fest a lot in St. Louis, but we were at one of those, and Bill does a one-man show that is it's off the hook. It's like watching Robin Williams. So he says, "Can anyone do a Hulk Hogan impression?" And the room's silent. No one wants to do it. And so he looks at me. He says, "Count." He said, "Come up and do your an impression." Well, so I went up. I don't have a Hulk Hogan impression. It was terrible. So I did some terrible thing. He says to me, "Put this on," and he pulls out this headband, and it's embroidered with Hulkster on it, and it's signed by Hulk Hogan. And he said to the crowd, "This is Hulk Hogan's headband. When he beat the Iron Sheik for the title, he gave that to me, and he inscribed it, and Bill has that." And he brought it to St. Louis with him, and he put it on my head. He said to me, "This is the conversation we had on stage." He says, "Put it on." I said, I can't put this on. Put it on." I said, "I'm not worthy to wear this." He said, "You're ruining my show. Put the headband on." So I put the headband on. I did some stupid Hulk Hogan impression. It was terrible. But I got to wear eh, the kid inside me is just out of control. So I find myself at Abdullah the Butcher's party in Atlanta, and they put me up at the head table up in during his banquet, and it's unbelievable. Malika has been incredibly generous to me. She sends me toys. She sends me. I bought a photo of Tony Atlas and Abby together that Tony had signed, and Abby's got the fork on Tony's head, and I posted it on Facebook because it's such a charming photo. And Malika called me. She said, "Send me that, please. I'm going to have Abby sign that." And he can't sign his name really well. He's not in great health at the moment. But he signed it. She sent it back to me, and she sent me a cowboy hat with Abdullah the Butcher on it, and she sent me a couple toys and some autographs. I mean, I tell her all the time, I don't know what I did to deserve all this from you, but she is fiercely loyal. She's very independent and very very kind and generous, and sharing, and she's I've been blessed to know people like her. And they gave me this award, and I did designed her program book for her, and like I said, it doesn't take a lot to thankfully for people to respond to kindness, small parts of kindness.
So let's get into some in-ring questions here.
All
So
right.
I want to know, as a referee, as experienced as yourself, what's worse, a wrestler or arguing over a 2 count, or a manager trying to distract you?
My gosh, it's always a manager all day long. They're pesky. Because they come up on the ring when they shouldn't be there. They know they shouldn't be there. Um, Freak does this to me all the time out at 814. Well, he used to. He's a wrestler now, but we had a very volatile relationship when he was a manager, because he was always on my case. He was always jawing at me all the time, always distracting me from it. And I can never be totally sure, but sometimes I think they're doing it just so they could, you know, do some illegal things behind my back. I don't know. But yeah, that's something that just really great. A 2 count, I can forgive that anytime, because these guys are putting their heart and their soul and their sweat into, this physical altercation. So yeah, when you think a guy's going to be down for 3 and he's not, I could take a little arguing about that. But gosh, those managers, when doing things they shouldn't be doing, that's I'm a stickler for the rules, Steve.
You're a referee. That's like your job is the rules.
So I always say a referee is the physical manifestation of the rules of wrestling inside the ring. That is my job. My job is to enforce those rules to the best of my ability.
Always have favorite referees like in each promotion and things like that. Like you could ask Steve like any promotion that I know a little bit about, right? Because I don't know as much, but I always have a favorite ref. So you're definitely my favorite in 814. I mean, I haven't seen your other promotions, but like anytime I see you, like you're totally my favorite. I love watching you in the ring. Like it's just so much fun. So
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. You're gonna make me blush a little bit. I appreciate that so much.
you.
So cool. Do you have a
So
favorite? Do you have a favorite national promotion referee, Mary?
my gosh. Listen, so in Ring of Honor, it was what was his name, babe? Paul Turner or
Sinclair?
Todd Sinclair.
Okay.
Paul Turner,
Okay.
Todd Sinclair. But
Yeah.
yes, he was my favorite. Obviously Aubrey Edwards out of AEW. She's my
Mhm.
favorite. She is so fun to watch. She is like so stiff, but also she is like so cool, so in control, and she doesn't take shit from anybody. Like I totally love her. And then when it comes to WWE, I'm a little bit less attached, but I do love this one ref that Nakamura calls the King of Strongbrow, and I simply love him because of his eyebrows. It's just a thing.
But you
New
know
Jap-
what it is. It is what it is.
and little Nate, he's like the dirty one, and of course, Baby Earl Hebner. Like it's hard to narrow one down in WWE because like there's just been so many over the years. And then of course
Yeah, for sure.
In New Japan, it's Red Shoes. Love that guy.
Of course. That's awesome.
But
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you had
but
an answer for that. Thank you.
now, do you have a favorite referee or a referee you loved growing up? Somebody that inspired you?
Oh, there's dozens of them, honestly. So the Hebners, of course, are probably the top two, Earl and Dave. Nobody argued like those guys did. They were just, the officials. They were an official's official. Dick Worley was a really cool guy. If you've never seen Dick Worley, take a look at him. Back in the 70s and early 80s, he had black bell bottom pants with a little white triangle at the very bottom of it, and he had the rolled up sleeve. He was a boxer, so he had a crooked nose and the gray hair, and and the muscle toned arms, and he would move around like a boxer. So he'd spin, walk backwards. He had really nice footwork. Um, there's a fellow named Gilberto Roman who was shaped a bit like me. I've got a little weight on him, but he looked like he was flamenco dancing in there. He was typically at Madison Square Garden. Um, Joey Morello was in there at WrestleMania 3 with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and I mean, man, it couldn't get any better than that. There was a referee named Jack Watts, old handlebar mustache, and a good arguer named Jack Kruger who just had this sort of thinning shock of hair that and big eyebrows that just looked like and what I realized is that a lot of these guys were of course you had the turncoat Danny Davis who cheated and made me mad all the time, but you had these guys who were typically a little bit older, not in their 20s, maybe with the exception of Joey Morella who was fairly young. A lot of those old timers, Dick Kroll was super tall and his sleeves never fit, um, but they were generally older, smaller guys, with the exception of Kroll, who was I think over 6 feet. So they would help make the wrestlers look bigger, but their age made them their age made their authority believable. And I kind of think, at 52 years old, maybe I have a little bit of that going on, and maybe why people respond so well because I've got the gray hair on the sides and and I look my age, so maybe that's in my favor of being an authoritarian inside the ring.
So if you were to officiate any one match that you've seen in history, what would be your one match that you could be the referee for?
I just named it. It's WrestleMania 3 all day long, the main event. It has to be.
I can't
Has to be.
imagine seeing Hulk Hogan scoop Andre the Giant up. Like, that had to be incredible to be there to see that, let alone
Oh
in
my
the
god.
ring to feel the weight of Andre the Giant, like, coming down on the mat. Like,
Hmm.
that's a good
In
one.
front of in front of 93,173 people, so they say. But yeah, that was just. I mean, the lead up to that thing, the marketing behind that was absolutely brilliant because I mean, I'm sure that was not the first time Andre the Giant had been picked up and slammed. It wasn't the first time he was picked up and slammed by Hulk Hogan. The Harley Race did it a lot, and they always said about. I never met Andre; he was gone before I got into this, but I know a lot of people that know him and have some incredible stories about him that they've told me, um, and he, if Andre didn't want to get picked up and slammed, he weren't going to do it. But one of the cool things too, speaking of Andre, is that at Cauliflower Alley Club reunion, we have a cribbage tournament, and cribbage is an old game that I don't think even people know much what it is anymore. I learned it from my dad years ago. He used to play with his brothers, and I've since forgotten that a long time ago. But it's very popular at CAC. There's an annual tournament, and this year I was in a meeting with Brian Blair, and he announced to us all that this year he is bringing with him a gift that was given to him, which is Andre the Giant's cribbage board. So these guys this year and ladies, they're going to be playing cribbage on Andre the Giant's cribbage board, and it is big. And it's instead of cribbage is it's a wooden board with a track of I think it's four dots that go all the way around. And normally people play with nails as the markers, but for Andres it's bullets. It's obviously not charged, but it's bullet casings that they use for that. So that's a pretty exciting thing. We're gonna on top of I don't remember, did I say this before? Travis Orndorff is coming to CAC and he's bringing Paul's robe. He's also bringing Mr. Wonderful watches that he's making. The cribbage board will be there. We're trying to get we're trying to get a representative of Macho Man's family who brings some of his gear around. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Henning's family comes to CAC every year, so we're trying to see if they'll bring some gear out. So we're gonna, hopefully have some pretty cool things for people to see there too.
So one thing I definitely don't want to forget to touch on, since we've had, so many wonderful things to talk about, is how you even got into refereeing. Like, how did this happen?
How did it happen? That's a good question. It happened because of cigars, plain and simple. So I'm no people who know me know that I'm a cigar guy. And I was at the Allegheny Smokeworks in Blawnox, PA, in 2019. And I'm having a cigar there with my buddy that owns the place. And I hear this ruckus in the corner over by the pipe tobaccos. And I look over and there's a guy sitting on a stool and there's a bigger guy standing over him. And the bigger guy's throwing punches and they're horsing around. But as the big guy throws punches, he's stomping the floor. And I looked at Mike and I said, that's a wrestling move right there. Who is that guy? Well, that's Todd Taylor. He's a wrestler. So I started talking to Todd Taylor. Um, he was wrestling. He was trained by Dominic Tanucci, wrestling for over 30 years now. And you know Todd if you know 814. Todd just last month beat up AC Norway, the owner of 814, and stole it from under him. So I've been meaning to chide him about that a little bit because that's also unfair, and I can't stand for that for long. But Todd and I became fast friends immediately, and talked about wrestling all the time. And he had told me that he was at a show one time when Matt Bourne was supposed to be Doink the Clown, and Matt didn't show up, and Dominic put him in the Doink costume, and became Doink the Clown for a time. So I met Todd, and Todd said to me, "You should come out with me to Johnstown and Altoona and see these." Back then, it was an 814 Wrestling. It's become since, but it was AON and Eclipse. So I went out there with him, and I started making friends out there and started helping put the ring up and down, and just became interested in the inside workings of it. Fell in love with it immediately because here's a bunch of people who are not making any money, but putting their lives on the line, their bodies on the line. And you could also go up and meet them and talk to them and interact. And it was really interesting. I didn't know that independent wrestling existed. I hadn't really watched wrestling. You got into wrestling at the Attitude Era, and that was when I was getting out of it. Just for life things that were going on after school and meeting my girlfriend who became my wife and started working and that sort of thing. So on one of the trips home from Altoona, I said to Todd, I would love to be able to get on the other side of the ring and be a ring attendant or whatever it is that we need. And he says, you can get on the other side of the ring, but you're not going to be a ring attendant. He said, how about a referee? And I thought, well, that's amazing. Can I do that? And I've realized since that I spent my life watching referees without really realizing it. And so I ended up, I said to him, I would love to be a referee, but if I'm going to do it, I really want to wear the baby blue shirt and the bow tie. Can I do that? And he said, well, let me talk to AC about it. And AC said, sure, you could do that. And he said to me, what do you want your name to be? And I said, I've been thinking about it. I think the Count is pretty cool, like the Undertaker or the Rock. And he said, that is cool, but I think you should also have a name. And, what do you think your name should be? And, my middle name's Charles, and it was my dad's name as well. And my dad passed before he ever saw this, and I wish he could see it. But I became Mark Charles, and he said to me, well, you're going to be Mark Charles the Third then. I said, why the Third? He says, it sounds distinguished. So I became Mark Charles the Third, and here we go. And it started in 2020 in the ring. My first match was Blackness Jack and Nomad, Marcus Cage, who were two of the craziest guys in the ring that you'll see. And it was a suitably crazy match. And it was right during the pandemic and COVID. And we were outdoors at, I forget the name of that. There's a little amusement park there, like near Altoona or something. And they have this. Well, anyway, I won't remember the details on that. I'm not great with memory, but that's how I started that thing. And since then I've wrestled in St. Louis, and I've refereed in St. Louis, refereed in Vegas, and I got to throw Nikita Koloff out of the ring this year in St. Louis, and I'm apologizing to him as I'm kicking him out of the ring because, oh my God, Nikita Koloff. Really amazing stuff. I mean, this career it took off in ways I never would have expected. And, I'm never going to be, I'm too old and I'm too fat to be on WWE or AEW or any of those things. But, like I said, I put my time into charitable works, and that's really I'm enjoying that quite a bit and making some great friends out of it too.
I think that, I mean, when it comes to WWE, they are very flashy, they are very movie. I think the reason why I like Todd Sinclair so much is that he was a bigger guy. He wasn't young. He could move though in the ring. Like he was one heck of a referee whenever you watch him. He's just like moving and shaking. He can keep up with everything and I like that about you too because you're kind of outside of the norm of like what the national promotions feature on TV, but like they're missing out on incredible talent to, do it based on
Appreciate that. I
anything
was
else.
I would have fit right in the 1980s. If it were the 1980s right now, I could absolutely be on television, fitting right in with those guys. Now it's the referees are so big and buff. When they get hit and fall out and get knocked out for 2 minutes, it doesn't even really seem so plausible, does it? But
Not
that's kind
believable.
of right. That's how it's going now. I just refereed a match with Beastman and AJ Alexander at Rise Wrestling on Saturday, and man, it was a hell of a match. It was really fantastic, and they kept me on my toes during that one. It was really something.
Yeah, I got to see Beastman for the first time last summer in a death match against Bear Bronson in Hartford. So
Oh my
that
gosh,
that was
he loves
something.
those. He loves those death matches. He went all over Japan doing that, and I wince every time I see these guys, beating themselves up like that. But you know, Beastman's a big guy. He knows what he's doing. He's chased me around the ring with bones and screwdrivers and you name it enough times that someone hits him with a light tube. Maybe he has it coming. I don't know. Don't tell him I said
Absolutely.
that.
So, Mark, what's the biggest misconception fans have about being a referee?
That it's easy. I think people think it's easier than it looks. Just because
Just count to
professional.
three.
Yeah, that's all right. Just count to three. On a night when I'm Iron Manning it, when there's only one referee, it's just me, and I'm coming in. And the last match, someone will say, "Hey, do you want me to go in there and do that for you?" No, I'm fine. You just keep your seat and relax, and I'll put on the show for you. But I think that's it. I think people don't realize the full role of the referee. They're starting to now. People talk about it a lot, but we good referees will make it easy, just like good wrestlers make it look like it's easy, or any professional of any profession will make something look easy, and it's just not.
What legacy do you hope the Count Mark Charles III leaves on professional wrestling?
I hit on this earlier. That kindness thing it sticks with me a lot. I do the things that I do, not for financial gain, but just to kind of leave this thing a little bit better than I found it, if that's possible. Um, then I've taken some verbal hits for, trying to. People think it's naive of me to, drive Virgil all over Kingdom Come without ever accepting a dime from him. We would buy him, lunch and take care of him, and not take money for that. And I drive people around. Referees typically, there's a long history of them chauffeuring, wrestlers around, and other folks. So I'm carrying on that tradition, and I never ask anybody for gas money. It just, I'm going there anyway, and that's kind of what it is. This, the Abdullah the Butcher Helping Hands Award to me, um, means a lot. Malika made the award, and named it for something that I think she knew that really resonates with me. And the helping hands thing. That's really what I would love to be remembered for.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up here, and I could talk wrestling history for hours as someone who studied the pro wrestling almanacs that came out every year in the 90s.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know, that was like my Christmas present. Like, oh, I got the almanac this year. I would study it from beginning to end.
So
But we'll
cool.
have to, we'd love to have you back on after your project with Bill comes out, talk about it, promote it. Um,
Sure.
but before we wrap up here, where can everyone follow your journey, learn more about the Cauliflower Alley Club, and check out, when the project with Bill comes out and where you'll be officiating next?
Absolutely. So Facebook, I'm old now, and Facebook is pretty much an old person's game, as I'm told by the younger kids. But that's where to find me. Look up Mark Charles III, referee, whatever it is, referee Mark Charles III, and you'll find me on there. My Instagram, I think, is the same thing. My Instagram is just linked up to my Facebook, so whatever I put on there goes on the other one. Um, Look up Cauliflower Alley Club on Facebook. Follow that. Subscribe over there. The After Chat. Find Bill Apter on YouTube and subscribe to him. I've got a YouTube channel on there, Mark Charles III. That's pretty much it. I joke that you could look up Mark Charles III on Google and it'll come back with King Charles III because he's more popular than I am. But you'll be able to find. I have shirts for sale and that sort of thing on TeePublic. If you type in referee Mark Charles III, you can find that kind of stuff too.
The Count, Mark Charles III, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. This wasn't just a conversation about being a referee. It was about giving back to the wrestling business, preserving its history, and showing what it means to truly love professional wrestling.
Hearing about your journey from an 80s WWF fan to sharing friendships with legends you once watched on television to your work with the Cauliflower Alley Club, the upcoming Bill Apter project, and the incredible stories you shared about Virgil, you've given us a look behind the curtain that fans don't often get to see.
And let's be honest, we finally settled the debate. No one has held more championships than a referee.
Well, maybe borrowed them for a few seconds.
Before we let you go, tell everyone where they can follow you on social media, keep up with your upcoming appearances, learn more about the Cauliflower Alley Club, and where they'll be able to get their hands on the new Bill Apter project.
We can just cut in that stuff from previous.
Yep.
A huge thank you once again to the Count Mark Charles III for joining us for another edition of our Summer Indie Spotlight series.
And thank you for spending part of your day with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow the Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling podcast on your favorite platform. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X so you never miss an episode, interview, or a live reaction show.
We shine a spotlight on the incredible people who make professional wrestling what it is, from wrestlers and referees to announcers, managers, promoters, and everyone in between. If there's someone in the independent wrestling scene whose story deserves to be heard, let us know.
Until next time,
Keep supporting independent wrestling,
keep supporting the people behind the scenes.
and we'll see you next time on the Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling podcast.
This is Mark Charles III, the Count, here with Mayor and Steve of Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling. Don't count them out.